Hey, what's going on, everybody? It is Tuesday, October 29th, and I just want to start out by saying the Yankees stink. They stink. They shouldn't even be on the same field with the Dodgers. I can't believe this atrocious play that has been going on. I mean, now I just wonder even how they won the American League championship. I mean, they look like a college baseball team compared to the Dodgers. The Yankees stink, and they're probably going to get swept. Well, they might win one game, but I mean, it has just been like unbelievably hard to watch. They're really, really bad. Anyway, so much for that. So we had a mixed close today. We had the NASDAQ making a new record high. It took a while. I mean, the last high was July 8th. So what was that, 3 months? It took 3 months. The Dow and the S&P had already made new highs. So it was just a matter of time before the NASDAQ followed through. We still have pretty good leading spending flows, but they look like they may be plateauing a little bit. October is just the first month of the fiscal data for this fiscal year. So it's going to take a little bit more time to see any kind of a developing trend. But I do see a trend developing very early now. It almost feels like one of these hurricane forecasters when, it's not a tropical cyclone yet. They're looking at a collection of thunderstorms out there in the tropical zone, belt, whatever you want to call it. And they're saying 10% chance of development, 20, 30% chance of development. Conditions are right. So I'm seeing interest income transfers with T-bill interest is down year over year. And that looks to be like a slowly developing trend. But, right now it's still too early to determine, but it does look like a slowly developing trend. So I saw another video with Elon Musk again. I mean, it's fascinating because it's just this guy. So today he's talking about, he says, we're taxed on our income. We're taxed when we buy something, and we are taxed on what we own. Way too much tax, and I agree with him on that. Like, it's way too much tax, but I got to separate a couple of those things, or at least one of those things. Tax on stuff we buy. That's basically at the state level. Okay, and remember, states are not currency issuers, they are currency users. So states actually do need to tax or raise revenue in some fashion because they are currency users. So, there's ways that they do that. There could be a state income tax, there could be a sales tax, there could be a property taxes. So, but states, you got to kind of separate that out. We don't have a national sales tax like a value added like they do in Europe, but states do have to tax. So I would just take that out. As on the income tax and the other taxes, he's right. I mean, taxation, income tax started in 1913 under President Woodrow Wilson. But back then we were on a gold standard. I mean, the money was backed by gold, and the government needed to collect, in order to have a supply of gold. If they didn't get the gold directly, they needed to tax. So that was a different monetary system. That was a different monetary system. We're not on a gold standard anymore. The government does need to tax in some way. Somebody asked me here, and people do ask me occasionally, then, Mike, if they could just print money, then why do we have to pay taxes? Because taxes that's what imparts the value to the currency. That's what gives the currency its value. I spoke about that yesterday. I mean, you're free to go earn money in yen or Chinese yuan or euro or British pounds. Nobody's going to stop you from doing that. But when it comes time to pay the U.S., if you're a U.S. citizen and if you owe taxes, you have to pay those taxes in the government's money, which is the U.S. dollar. So the dollar is needed by the non-government in order to satisfy tax liabilities, and that necessity, that need, is what creates value. Yeah, there has to be, people have to have access to dollars, or entities, citizens, companies have to have dollars for the most part to pay taxes. I mean, most people do have some kind, or most businesses do have some kind of tax liability. So, what's his name? Elon Musk says, so he went through this thing, he said, where, you know, we're taxed on our income, we're taxed when we buy stuff, we're taxed on what we own, too much tax. I agree with him. But then he says we gotta shrink the government so people could keep more of their money. And this is where he gets confused, the idea of taxation as opposed to government spending. Government spending is what puts the dollars into the economy, all right? Just to give you an example, like these figures are going to be rounded off, okay, just for the sake of simplicity to make the argument. The government spends $7 trillion annually. All right, if you divide that up by 300 or 350 million people, I don't think we're at 3, but let's use 350 million. That basically comes to a transfer of $20,000 for every man, woman, and child, every citizen of the United States. Now, obviously, it's not equally distributed like that, but that's what it breaks down to, right? $20,000 times 350 million, that's 7 trillion, okay? He wants to cut the government, which is another way of saying cut government spending. So let's use that example. Now we cut it, let's say we cut it to, to 3 trillion, or 3.5 trillion instead of 7 trillion. So instead of $20,000 per every single citizen of the United States, it's going to be 10,000. So you're going to get you're going to get half. Okay, so that's not helping in keeping more of what you earn. All right, you want the government to put out a nice, good supply of dollars, because that just is like a bigger pie for everybody. You got a better chance of getting some of those dollars when there's more in the system. All right, if you start to restrict that, I've used the example. You get a pizza. You got 8 slices, okay? You got 4 friends over. Everybody could have 2 slices. 4 more people come over. Everybody gets 1 slice. Every single person after that, after the 8 people, everybody either gets a smaller slice, or some people don't get any slices. All right, so you want to have a nice pool of dollars out there in the economy so that we all have a chance to earn. Okay, and I'll qualify that by saying you don't want to put dollars out there in a magnitude where it's going to use up all of our capacity to meet those dollars with supply, right? We don't want to push it beyond what the economy is able to supply, because that's when you have inflation. But don't forget, we're in a global economy. So it's not just about the capacity of the United States. I mean, we've been outsourcing stuff for decades. The United States industrial capacity is like 76%. It was like 90-something% in the 60s. What happened with the other 25%? Well, we get it from the foreign sector. Anyway, he gets it confused. You don't want to shrink the size of the government. You want to cut taxes. If you cut taxes, that's what's going to allow people to keep their money. The taxes are what's draining the money from people. And I also find it kind of comical, actually, that a guy who's worth $250 billion is complaining and whining about taxes. I mean, the government could literally take away 99% of his wealth, and he'd still be a billionaire, like a couple of times over. So he's still, if they took away 99% of his wealth, he'd still have like $3 billion or whatever, which is more than most people in many, many lifetimes is ever going to see. It's more than most of the world is ever going to see. So, I mean, it's kind of crazy when you have a guy worth $250 billion complaining about taxes. But I agree with him that it's just, we're for a currency issuing nation that's no longer like a currency user. See, like in Germany and France and Italy and Spain and those countries on the euro, they have to tax because they have to get euro from somewhere. They don't issue the euro. The ECB does. In the United States, we don't have that. I mean, so you want the government to put out, me personally, I'd much rather have an economy where there's an abundance of financial resources, dollars, that I can go out there if I hustle and I'm innovative and I'm smart, that I can go and accumulate those dollars. Once they start shrinking that dollar supply, then what? I mean, Musk is never going to have to worry about that. Come on. I just told you they could take away 99% of his net worth. He'd still be worth like $3 billion. But the rest of us, and especially working people, I mean, you want to have access to that. You need to have access to that. Because if there's still going to be some tax liability, you're going to have those dollars to pay the tax liability. So it's another example of where he gets confused between the size of government, which implied in that statement is the amount the government spends. And I said yesterday, that's a political decision. We all want our stuff. We send representatives to Washington. They end up, we like a strong military. We like, health care and Social Security and things like this. I mean, I do, seniors do, and other stuff, basic science and research, But here's the thing, he's confused between the size of government, which essentially what he's talking about is the spending, and taxation. I mean, if you want people to keep more of their money, you don't shrink the size of the government, because that's like shrinking the pizza. It's just going to be a mad scramble to get what's ever left over there. And a lot of people are going to be left out. Not guys like him who are locked in, but most everybody else is going to be left out. What you want to do is cut the tax burden. There's no need, especially on income. Like, income is a consequence of a productive activity. Like, you're working, you're doing something. Okay? So, I mean, why are we taxing a productive activity? I mean, that's just stupid. That's stupidity. But he doesn't seem to get the distinction between those two things. And that's a very, very important distinction. I agree with him that people should be able to keep more of their money. I don't say their own money, because like I said yesterday, it's the government's money. They should be able to keep more of that money. But you don't do it by shrinking. You do it by cutting taxes. That's what has to be done. Anyway, that's it for today. Tomorrow we get the EIA weekly petroleum status report. The API inventories came out with a small crude build. They were, a small crude draw. They were expecting a build, I think, of like 2.7 million. It was like a draw of 600,000 barrels. And we'll see what's going on there tomorrow. In any case, please like and subscribe. And don't forget, go to my website, pitbulleconomics.com. Sign up for a 30-day free trial to MMT Trader. I'll see you tomorrow. Bye.